Good evening. Quote, "Thus strangely are our souls constructed, and by slight ligaments are we bound to prosperity and ruin." The novel Frankenstein tells us the story of the scientist Victor Frankenstein taking body parts from a graveyard and stitching together his creature, which then comes alive and begins terrorizing his village. The book prompts readers to question whether the real monster is the creature or the man responsible for his creation. Among the questions that Frankenstein raises is one of the difference between a human creator and a less than human creation. This story now exists in a more modern realm, that of artificial intelligence. When art becomes more than just a human activity, there are several issues one must address, one being meaning. Art is an inherent part of what it is to be human, and humanity is an inherent part of creating art. Art is defined as an expression. It is almost always used as a statement, but AI art does not stand out to us in the same way, does not tell a story in the same way, because it lacks personhood. The second and most important issue that one must address is ethics. It's difficult to place blame or responsibility when something goes wrong, because AI does not function cognitively on its own. Although there is no universally agreed upon answer, one may assume that the responsibility falls on the user. Because of this responsibility, all users must have an intentionality about how and if this technology can be used in good conscience. The morality of this issue is not new. The idea of intelligence and cognition existing in machines dates back much further than most might think. In ancient Greek myths, the god of fire, Hephaestus, creates helpers called automatons that can forge metal in the fire by themselves. These are our first look at machines who can act independently of humans. Thinkers imagined many more automatons and mechanical men over the years, increasingly blurring lines between man-made and made man. In 1275, the theologian Raymond Lull created a machine which he called the Ars Magna that can combine facts to produce new ideas. This is the first example of the process by which our current AI models work, by being given information and drawing new conclusions. An interesting development was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which, as mentioned before, explores the ethics of creating sentient beings. Although the creature isn't made of hardware and code, he is comparable to other created cognition like AI software, and that Victor built him out of scientific curiosity without thinking about what could go wrong, and when the creature acts violently, he is unprepared. In the same way, we cannot control how artificial cognition will act despite scientists' consideration of morality. The specific focus on the technology of artificial intelligence picked up in 1935 with Alan Turing's Turing machine, his idea of the supercomputer. In addition to the Turing machine, he developed a test called the imitation game as a way to distinguish whether a machine is intelligent. If a person is unable to tell whether they are communicating with a machine or a person, the machine is considered intelligent. After Turing, a scientist named John McCarthy coined the term artificial intelligence, which helps solidify it as a scientific field. In the 90s and early 2000s, AI models were trained using data and images, and they began being able to identify objects. Meanwhile, other companies began to transfer this technology into physical products. The Furby and other domestically designed robots joined the market, bringing artificial intelligence into the daily lives of children and families everywhere. Over the next 20 years, AI began to spread across many fields in small ways. The Roomba used AI to learn locations around the home, and NASA utilized AI for their autonomous rovers to explore the surface of Mars. Although many programs have come before, no one gained public attention like ChatGPT. OpenAI released their generative AI program, ChatGPT, in November 2022. Generative AI is a subcategory of artificial intelligence which produces images, text, audio, and video. In just 2 months, ChatGPT became the fastest growing software in history, gaining over 100 million users. Because of the model's ability to adapt to custom prompts and respond in a conversational fashion, users found ChatGPT to be a user-friendly and accessible introduction into AI use. With this achievement, other companies quickly jumped on the opportunity to build their own AI platforms. In 2024, corporate AI investment was over $252 billion. One can now find artificial intelligence everywhere, from a simple Google search to social media, to the writer's room, and to the classroom. Yet there is a problem. As AI begins to move from convenience tasks to fields of creation, workers in these fields experience concern about AI's place and their own. All of these programs train using large data sets with images scraped directly from the internet. Shortly after ChatGPT's release, a group of software developers filed a lawsuit against Microsoft, GitHub, and OpenAI, claiming that the AI program Copilot is able to generate material from its training data exactly, without proper attribution. Getty Images filed similar cases just a few months later, claiming that Stability AI illegally trained their model using Getty Images without purchasing a license. Seeing growing concerns for danger associated with AI growth, an executive order signed by former President Joe Biden aimed to prevent AI threat to civil liberty and national security. This order marked an achievement as the most comprehensive piece of US governance concerning AI, but was later rescinded by President Trump. Later, France held the Artificial Intelligence Action Summit, where 61 countries committed to the Pledge for a Trustworthy AI in the World of Work to promote responsibility, inclusivity, and ethicality within AI. The statement read, quote, "Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war," end quote. A long list of tech giants signed the statement, including Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, Bill Gates, and many others. Unfortunately, the US and UK both refused to sign the pledge, denying the commitment to prioritize issues concerning AI. Both parties agreed that biblical commands are what we should strive to follow. However, producers and users of AI would say that we can maintain virtuous practices while using AI. The use of generative AI violates the biblical commands of stewardship, diligence, and love thy neighbor through the environmental effects, effects on human cognition and work, and effects on human artists. The first biblical command that the use of generative AI violates is the command of stewardship. Stewardship is defined as the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. God entrusts the earth to Adam, saying in Genesis 1:28, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." God gave man, his most beloved creation, dominion over the earth, trusting that we would take care of it for him. He made the earth as a perfect place for life to spring and for man to flourish, but we have taken this gift for granted. We are allowing our earth and communities to decay, and the rise of artificial intelligence is a contributing factor. The use of AI disturbs and destroys our earth through the overuse of water. The processors in data centers are scorching hot and require a lot of water to cool them down to a safe temperature. A study done on water consumption tells us that a 1 megawatt data center uses the same amount of water consumed daily by 300,000 people. As of 2025, AI's water withdrawal has surpassed the 450 billion liters consumed by the water bottle industry every year. In addition to this, the UN just released a report declaring that the Earth has entered a global water bankruptcy, a state of depleted clean drinking water. Combining these with the fact that data centers use fresh water to cool processors, which is the only 3% of water on the Earth that humans can drink, this consumption easily becomes concerning. The use of AI impacts our Earth and communities also through the production of greenhouse gases. This is because data centers use natural gas as a power source. Most data centers use a combination of natural gas and clean energy, but as the need for power goes up, companies turn more to natural gas. Large amounts of greenhouse gases being released into the atmosphere lead to many environmental concerns like ocean acidification and loss of air quality. An example of this deprioritization is Google, who produces the majority of data centers in the United States. Their greenhouse gas emissions have increased 48% from 2019 to 2023, and they have admitted that their surge in energy consumption is due to the growth of AI. As we can see from all this evidence, the rise of AI use has a direct link to the abundance of greenhouse gas emissions in the last 5 years. The second biblical command that the use of generative AI violates is diligence. One study reports that 40% of organizations are implementing generative AI in use for strategy and market assessment, with a significant amount also making use in due diligence and deal execution. This is dangerous because the humans who were previously responsible for these tasks are at risk of their decision-making capabilities being lost. A recent workplace survey showed that workers who use AI frequently experience high levels of burnout 10% more than those who had never used AI. This can be compared to humans' reliance on cars. Cars get us from place to place, but cities stop being walkable, people have to make time to exercise in other ways, and the average person becomes much more unhealthy. When we use AI frequently, we are forced to lose the daily exercise we once had, and our brains become unhealthy and unused. The third biblical command that the use of generative AI violates is loving thy neighbor. Scripture gives us this command in Romans, saying, "Any other commandments are summed up in this word, you shall love your neighbor as yourself." Love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. In accordance with loving your neighbor, God gives us 10 practical applications of what not to do in the form of the 10 commandments given to Moses. We will focus on the commands, do not steal and do not covet. Generative AI violates the command to love your neighbor by using existing art made by human artists. Stability AI publicized its dataset containing billions of images scraped from the internet, including thousands of artists' names and works, and even personal photos. A comic artist, Sarah Anderson, found that simply searching her name on Stable Diffusion prompted a replica of her art to be produced. She sued the company, and the judge found both direct and induced copyright infringement claims to be plausible. Even the United States Patent and Trademark Office rejected generative AI as creating new work, saying, almost by definition, it will involve the reproduction of entire works. Additionally, many illustrators are seeing decline in income and projects as customers turn to faster and cheaper alternatives to artist commission. Katria Radin, an independent artist, testifies that she used to be frequently reached out to for illustrations by large companies, but this year that number has significantly decreased, almost to zero, and this may be due to those choosing AI alternatives. In light of this, we cannot sit idly by as our neighbors, our brothers and sisters, are taken advantage of by companies that have no regard for how to love and treat their neighbor. By using generative AI programs, we sit by and even encourage this disregard for our fellow man. One could argue that the use of generative AI does not violate biblical commands because AI's use of art for training is not theft. When AI art is created, the program filters through training data and takes portions of different images to composite something new. One can argue that all art is created in the same way. It is commonly agreed upon that all art is a culmination of what has come before. Many artists have run into issues with this concept though. In 2017, the family of a writer on Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On sued Ed Sheeran for copyright infringement in his song Thinking Out Loud. The case ultimately ruled in Sheeran's favor, with him arguing that although the melodies are similar, the chords used are the building blocks of pop music and cannot be copyrighted for one person when they are used in countless songs. So why should this be different from when a computer program pulls inspiration from outside sources to create AI art? The difference is in the process. When humans develop an idea, they are always influenced by the greats that came before them and may imitate previous styles while creating something new. When an AI creates a piece of art, they cannot make an independent or new creation because they literally break a set of images up and put them back together. Man has been given the capacity of creativity by God that cannot be recreated to give to artificial intelligence. If man is to assume he is able to give a machine intelligence, he has made himself a god. Artificial intelligence is not capable of being creative because it does not possess the breath of life and is not able to have lived experiences that influence emotion and reflection. Additionally, AI art contains no credits or acknowledgement of original source material. Someone creating music might credit another person's work as a sample or interpolation. Meanwhile, AI programs take art and distort it until it's almost impossible to trace, with no recognition of the original creators. Because of this, generative AI continues to violate the biblical command of loving thy neighbor through the theft of art. In summary, the use of generative AI violates the biblical commands of stewardship, diligence, and loving thy neighbor. We first considered the violation of stewardship through the environmental effects of AI, demonstrated by the overuse of water and the production of greenhouse gases. We continued with the violation of diligence through a loss of cognitive ability. Finally, we observed the violation of loving thy neighbor through the effects on human artists. This was shown in the use of art without consent, copyright infringement, and loss of original market value for art. In an effort to uphold these virtues, the action one should take is to cease our consumption of AI-generated media. The simplest way to do this is to algorithmically block certain content from our feed when using social media. Once you have identified an AI-generated image or video, you can enter the video description or settings on that social media platform and request removal of either videos similar or certain keywords. This is the easiest and most applicable way that a majority of social media consumers can remove their support of generative AI and grow in obedience to God's commands. Additionally, we should support companies who have taken care to make their refusal of AI known. Some include Unsplash for stock photos, PosterSpy for movie posters, and Divine, a social media app, all of which have banned AI content on their platforms. Also, the Oscars, who have recently removed award eligibility for AI-generated content. Some other large companies that have taken a firm stance against AI are Dove, Nintendo, Cadbury, Polaroid, and others. Giving support to these admirable organizations shows others that AI is a deal breaker and the people will not tolerate it. In practicing these things, one can assure their conscience is safe in a new and uncertain technological world. Thank you.
Hello, Allie. Welcome. Okay, I have a few questions to ask you. The first is this. Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You gave us a lot of good information and arguments about why we should not use AI. Are there any specific instances in which it is morally acceptable for humans to use it?
Thank you for your question. To answer shortly, yes. I would say that there are two rules or distinctions that one could use in order to determine whether a use of AI is negative. What I focus mostly is the first, which is leisure tasks. Tasks that we do in our free time, like creating art, shouldn't warrant AI use because we're meant to spend time on them. They're not meant to be totally efficient. And they're not subjective, so an AI would not be able to do them better or correctly. This leads to the second rule, which is tasks that cannot be improved by AI. So an example of one of these tasks would be a student using AI to edit an essay. Grammar rules aren't a thing that can be synthesized. We can't draw a new conclusion about them. They're simply rules. So if a person were to use like an online resource for these rules and they were diligent in their editing process, this should not be any different than if an AI tool was used to do that same job. An example of a scenario when an AI would be permissible would be when that job can be improved by the use of AI. An undeniable benefit of AI is pattern recognition. AI programs are better than humans at pattern recognition. So one way that it can be used in a beneficial way would be in the medical field. If we had a doctor who was maybe struggling with a certain diagnosis, then that person could implement AI in addition to their own cognition in order to come to a better conclusion. So to summarize all of that, AI being used by experts in small ways instead of being used by millions of people for whatever task that they desire would reduce the problems that I bring up in my thesis, which it wouldn't be used to make art, it wouldn't impede our cognitive ability, and because the use is much smaller, it would allow for clean energy practices.
Okay, I wanna focus a little bit on the aspect of leisure time that you mentioned within that response. A common argument used to support AI is that you raised in your thesis, is that it helps human beings to eliminate menial, inconvenient tasks in their life. Or it can do that, and it will continue to do that. So for example, there's an AI right now that can load and unload your dishwasher, a menial task that very few humans actually like doing. In theory, that would free human beings up to spend their leisure time more creatively, and you seem to value that time. I've seen you do lots of creative things this year, one of which is Allie knits a lot in class, which I think is really neat. But you seem to value time to create. And we human beings, as creations of God, in some ways imitate our creator by creating. Isn't that something we should value and want? Shouldn't we want that leisure time? Shouldn't we want AI to remove some of the menial tasks in our lives so that we can pursue things, including creative pursuits like art?
So I think those creative endeavors absolutely should be valued. I think that's a pretty common sentiment throughout my thesis, but the problem is that humans tend to not use that time well. I'm sure all of the teenagers in the room can attest to the fact that when we do have time, we sit scrolling on our phones or doing anything else that could be used beneficially. So while that time might allow for better creative endeavors, we just tend to not use that time well.
So in theory, if a lot of the menial tasks in our lives were eliminated, they would not be replaced, in your view, by us doing our creative pursuits. It would be replaced with more doom scrolling and Netflix watching.
Correct.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, I want to go back to one of the cases that you raised in your thesis. So the Sarah Anderson case. Can you just quickly summarize that for the audience so they recall also that case?
Sure. So this was a case involving a comic illustrator who who searched her own name on an AI platform, essentially asking it to draw a comic in the style of her art, and it replicated her art. So that essentially means that her pieces were used as part of the images that were used to train the AI. So her images were taken off the internet without her consent and used to train this AI platform.
Okay, you said she sued someone. Who?
She sued the distributor of Stable Diffusion, which is Stability AI.
Okay. So in cases where an image is used through AI to create something that is called new art, so someone like Sarah Anderson's creative style is imitated through the use of AI, why is that different fundamentally than Ed Sheeran imitating Marvin Gaye's song?
I would say mostly it is fundamentally different because that recreation is intentional. When Ed Sheeran creates a melody, he's heard these songs before, but he's not saying, I'm going to take this piece from this song and this piece from this song to create something that I'm going to call my own. But AI is forced to do that because it cannot create something new, and it uses those sources directly.
Was she successful in her lawsuit?
The case is still ongoing, but as I mentioned before, the judge said that her judgment of copyright infringement was possible.
Okay, so the precedent is definitely set for
Yes.
this. Okay, we have this copyright.
Yes.
Sort of in light of that, there is a lot of thinking about AI having this sort of doomsday effect on humanity in general. So much so that people like Elon Musk say that proliferating AI is like summoning the demon. That's a direct quote from him. And there's a project right now started by the founders of ChatGPT that theorizes AI could achieve super intelligence in as few as 7 years. Can you explain briefly what that is, what super intelligence is, and then do you think we should consider AI in such apocalyptic terms? Considering something morally wrong is different than considering it to be something that could bring about the end of the world.
Thank you for your question. There are 3 different types of AI. The first is artificial naive intelligence, which has a lower level of intelligence than humans. Then there is artificial general intelligence, which is at the same level as humans. And then there is artificial super intelligence, which surpasses human intelligence. According to our creation story and what the Bible tells us about the connection of the soul and the body, I would say that artificial superintelligence is not a possible technological advancement. As I said before, God is the only being that can create soul and mind on his own. So man cannot give that same power to a machine. So although I admire these tech giants for assuming that responsibility that their technology may have had other negative effects, I would say that AI taking over the world and having an apocalypse due to it is not a realistic worry that we should have, and that we should be much more focused on the 3 problems that I stated in my thesis that we are seeing in our communities right now.
Okay, just really quick on that note. Allie put together some interesting visuals that we were unable to show that sort of would help an audience member recognize the distinction between something that AI created and something that was human created. Is there any way you can describe the difference so that your audience would understand? I know that's not the same as showing an image, but if you're able to, I think it would be beneficial. Like if they're walking through an art museum and there's 2 paintings side by side, and one is AI generated and one is human, how would they be able to recognize the human touch in the painting or photograph or whatever form of art that was designed by a human?
Yeah, I would love to. One of the most common distinctions is that AI is not very good at generating human anatomy. So things like that we see very commonly, like extra fingers and uncanny visuals, are big notifiers that we can use to identify an AI image. A good rule is just that if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. A common one in videos that we see on social media is also that same rule. if things just don't seem quite right, then it's probably generated by AI. Like lots that I see are like footage of animals doing human tasks or things like that that just simply just don't exist in the real world. So we know that they have been generated by AI. Does that make